It's finally Friday.
It's Friday, Friday.
Thank God it's
All right, welcome back to the Friday Show. I'm Scott Jagow, along with Ray Paulick. Glad you could join us. Coming up, we'll talk about some philosophy around handicapping the Derby, just a week away, unbelievably. But first, every year at this time of year, the racing media talks about Todd Pletcher. And deservedly so, because again, he has a whole band of horses that could be in the Derby, as many as 5. That's a quarter of the field. And he's done this before. Unfortunately, his record in the Derby isn't so good. 1 for 45. And this year, if he gets 4 or 5 of those horses in, he's going to pass Dwayne Lucas as having the most starters ever. And he's not even 50 years old. Where do you come down on this whole Pletcher not winning the Derby thing?
The modern thoroughbred owner desperately wants to get to the Kentucky Derby. They want to have a starter in the Derby. And no one has been more successful at that than Todd Pletcher. He hasn't been training that long. He hasn't been training long enough to get in the Hall of Fame yet. As soon as he's eligible, he'll get in. But 45 starters before this year is phenomenal. 1 for 45 is not so phenomenal. So he's been more successful than anybody else over this span of time in making owners happy, in doing for them what they want. They want to have a horse in the Derby. He's earned those horses way into the Derby, either through the point system in recent years or before that with graded stakes money. So he's been very successful at doing what the owners want him to do, and they keep giving him horses year after year.
And if you look at the 45 horses, about 22 of them have been 20-1 or higher, which to me indicates maybe they're horses that if Todd Pletcher had his druthers, he would tell them to skip the Derby and go somewhere else. But it's the Kentucky Derby. How are you going to tell an owner to skip it? So I think there's some, in his favor, you know, those odds and that number of horses kind of shows you. I mean, he hasn't had a Derby favorite before. I think a good analogy is John Calipari, the coach of University of Kentucky's basketball team. He's had droves of NBA talent come through his program, but he only has 1 championship to show for it. And even he, before this year's NCAA tournament, said, I need a second one. I need to get that second one. It's because the perception in sports about championships is you got to have more than one if the expectations are high and you're a Hall of Fame talent. Peyton Manning, same thing. A long stretch of his career, he only had 1 championship, and he got a lot of criticism for it. So I think the criticism toward Pletcher is fair, but mainly because he set the bar so high with his success.
Yeah, just like Calipari has turned out dozens of NBA players from Kentucky, Pletcher has turned out many horses that have gone on to be leading sires and have made a lot of money for their owners. Scat Daddy, Speightstown, More Than Ready, Harlan's Holiday, Uncle Mo, and there's many others. He's won 7 Eclipse Awards as outstanding trainer. He won the money title 6 consecutive years from 2010 to 15, 9 Breeders' Cup wins, 2 Belmonts. Horses have earned over $336 million. I don't think Todd goes home Derby night and cries himself to sleep. He wants to win, make no doubt about that. But I don't think this is what drives him. What drives him is getting horses, doing the whole thing over again. I'm sure he's already looking forward to next year with some of the 2-year-olds that he's seen that he's going to be training this year.
Yeah, I wonder, if he gets the second one, do you think all the talk will go away, or will people say next year, well, he's only 2 for 50?
That's exactly right. 2 for 50. That's horrible.
All right, let's move on and talk about the field this year and how to break it down. We basically know who's in. There might be a bubble horse or two that gets in and somebody drops out. At this point, a week away, Ray, what are you doing to eliminate the pretenders and focus on the contenders?
Well, they don't run the race on paper. So I try to look at the horses physically. How are they doing coming up to the race? Are they, in their morning activities? Are they relaxed? Are they anxious? Are they on the muscle? Are they doing the right thing, switching leads when they should? And the great thing is, you used to have to go to Churchill Downs and you couldn't see a lot because there's so many people there and you can only see one thing at a time. Now, because of the internet, we can watch Churchill Downs live streaming of the workouts. We can go to XBTV and see taped workouts of the horses. you have so much more information visually than you used to have, and it makes it that much easier. So I focus really on the physical. They have to have ability on paper, but then the physical animal is what, to me, is sort of the differentiator.
On the flip side, though, I've watched or heard on the backstretch Derby week, man, watch this horse train. He's been training unbelievable, and he finishes 10th. So you have to combine the other factors like pedigree. I mean, that horse I'm thinking of from a few years ago didn't have a great pedigree for 1.25 miles. So you've got to consider the pedigree so you can eliminate some that you don't think can get the distance. You got to look at the times from the prep races, especially the final 8th and 3/8. If they can get under 13 seconds for the 8th and under 38, they probably qualify. And there have been only a handful, so you can eliminate a handful that have done that in the Derby preps, the mile and 1/8 preps. And then finally, you look at the previous races. I'll give you a great example. You watch the Arkansas Derby, and I'm not paying attention to Classic Empire. I've already looked at him. I'm looking back in the field to find horses that are, not winning the race, but might have had troubled trips. And I looking at Lee, number 6, coming down the stretch. He's all over the place, in and out, weaving. He just had a terrible trip. He only lost by a length and something. So to me, he's a horse I'm watching the next time out. And that next time could be the Derby because he's right on the bubble. He's the next horse up. So those are the kind of things I'm looking for when mining the video replays.
One thing of note is the favorite has won the last 4 Kentucky Derbies, and I believe that's only happened twice before in history. In the 1970s, 4 consecutive favorites won the Derby, but you have to go back to the late 1800s to find 5 winning favorites in a row of the Kentucky Derby. I don't think we're going to see a 5th winning favorite this year, and right now I'm not even sure who it's going to be.
Well, I think Classic Empire probably will be the favorite
so?
Based on his Arkansas Derby. That came back a pretty good race. All those horses came home fast. The time was fast. The Florida Derby is another one we've talked about, and of course, Always Dreaming is probably going to be right there as second choice. But I don't think it's going to be a 2-to-1 favorite this year, like Nyquist or American Pharoah. It's going to be more like 5-to-1 than a 7-to-1. I kind of enjoy it when a long shot wins the Derby, especially if you pick them. Even though it's great to have the American Pharaohs and those kinds of stories. Every once in a while, it's nice to have a long shot, and I think we're going to get one this year.
Well, half the field is going to be represented by as few as 3 trainers. You've got the Todd squad of 4 and 5 or 5 horses. Steve Asmussen may have 3, and Mark Casse will have 2, both of whom I think are legitimate. So 2 of those 3 have never won the Derby before. Which one do you think will win it?
Well, that's our poll question. They have about half the field. So will it be one of these 3 guys, or will it be somebody else winning this year's Kentucky Derby? Let us know what you think at PaulickReport.com. All right, that's going to do it for this edition of the Friday Show. We'll see you next week from Churchill Downs.